Hello, my name's Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another team reveal video. This team reveal video is going to be a hell of a lot more interesting than last week's one. Myself and Josh both planning on making a lot of moves and a lot of changes within our teams this week because, of course, those fixture swings are just around the corner. Without further ado, let's get into Josh's team.
Yeah, last week no moves between us. I think this week there could be as many as six moves between us. So yeah, from one end of the spectrum to the other. Getting into my team then off the back of a small red arrow, I think 300k places, mainly due to Erling Haaland and Reinders on that Sunday afternoon. Yeah, that goal really sort of done me over with the likes of, I think I had Raya starting last week, which obviously would have benefited me if they kept a clean sheet. But albeit we're going into this week fairly happy with how the season's gone so far. Obviously, I did wildcard a couple of weeks ago, so the team is in good shape. But it's just a case of switching those premium assets as to why I'm making so many moves this week. So yeah, starting off in goal, we've got David Raya. Newcastle away, I don't think it's a bad option in terms of the clean sheet potential. Newcastle have been a lot better at home in their attacking data than their away form. But I do think there's a chance for Arsenal to keep a clean sheet. I don't think Newcastle have been that great going forwards. Obviously, they've been missing a few key assets as well. FPL Cup action in the midweek as well for both sides. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of teams and lineups they play. We are recording this on Tuesday night. Tosin is in the back. Obviously, he was benched initially against United at the weekend. I think I was mainly just for a rest. I do still think he's first choice centre half for Chelsea at the moment. He isn't in the squad at all for the Lincoln game in EFL Cup duty, so I imagine he comes straight back in for that Brighton at home fixture. A lot of Chelsea fans were very shocked to see him miss that United game from the start with his aerial threat in terms of against Benjamin Sesko. So yeah, an interesting call from Maresca, but I think it was just mainly due to fatigue with him. Van Dijk's next. Obviously, Crystal Palace away is going to be a tough one for Liverpool, but I do expect to get some DEFCON points from him. I think he did hit it in the Community Shield, if I recall rightly. So yeah, again, he's been an absolute monster for that so far this season. And then Marcus Senesi rounds off the defence. Speaking of DEFCONs, he is Mr. DEFCON at 4.7 million. It's a very cheap route into some nice points. Leeds away this week as well gives me a good opportunity at a clean sheet for Bournemouth, where other than last week, I'd say Leeds have been pretty poor going forwards. And when you take into account that it was Wolves they were playing, I think we can say that Bournemouth will have a good chance of some clean sheets this week. So yeah, what's the thoughts on defence, Ben?
Yeah, fairly solid defence, looking at covering all the bases possible, not putting too many eggs in one basket, which I think is sensible there. David Raya in goal, I think is a really good cut price option to get into that Arsenal defence, and the same can be said about Tosin. I don't think he's a bad option at all. And then, of course, the DEFCON merchants, Van Dijk and Essie. What you want is a really high floor for your defence. We've seen that so far this season. Teams that have been better have been the teams that have gone for players with a higher potential of DEFCON, because then it sort of negates the risk of picking them. So yeah, all in all, fairly solid defence.
Nice. Then on to midfield. Then we've got Lucas Paqueta at first. Obviously, West Ham have not really improved since their good performance against Nottingham Forest. It might have just shown how bad maybe Nottingham Forest were rather than West Ham picking things back up again. So yeah, he comes in for Everton away. I think it's still an okay fixture for West Ham. The pressure's mounting for Graham Potter. So, if he's going to keep his job, he's going to have to start winning games. And if they are winning games, Lucas Paqueta is usually a part of it. So yeah, he's in there, obviously on penalties as well. Defcons have not been as maybe strong as what they were earlier in the season, in the last couple, but he has been getting thrown about in different positions as well, which hasn't really helped things. So yeah, in an ideal world, I probably wouldn't own him right now, but he's there, and it's a decent fixture run for West Ham that I'll be targeting. Antoine Semenyo's next. Obviously, he's been fantastic. There's not much really needed to be said about him. He's risen in price, I think, 3 times since I've owned him already, which is a bit mental. So hopefully he can keep doing that because the team value is struggling around here. Bruno Fernandes is one of my transfers in this week. So I've making a 3-switch move, as I alluded to at the start. He's one of them coming in for Mo Salah. Brentford away this week and then Sunderland at home next week's great. I just want to have someone who's reliable every single week. We saw it last week where he's coming away with a 10-pointer from just scoring a goal in that game. And yeah, like he's picking up defcons in other weeks. He's on penalties as well. So yeah, it's just super reliable. I want that back in my team. So yeah, he's coming in for this week. Iliman Ndiaye is the next transfer in. West Ham at home is a nice fixture for an entry point for these Everton assets, as I mentioned with Paquetá. I think it's going to be an interesting game to watch. Obviously, David Moyes against his old club as well. So yeah, Njai should be on penalties, hopefully, and yeah, been good attacking threat so far this season. So he'd be coming in for Cody Gakpo as it stands. I haven't made these moves for clarification just yet, so if anything was to happen, I can be quite flexible. But this is, 99% sure. I'm just waiting for these EFL Cup games to blow by. So what's the thoughts on that midfield, Ben?
Yeah, fairly solid midfield, and look, the transfer moves to sort of start moving out those Liverpool assets is one that I think sensible, just given the fixtures turning and the assets that we thought would be really good for Liverpool, not quite living up how we thought they would, despite them sort of winning every game so far this season. I agree with you, Bruno Fernandes. He's a flexible option in terms of sort of moving him on if you need to, but also consistent in his returns. And when he does return, it's usually sort of a fairly sizable return at that. Ndiaye, I think, is a great option. Don't mind that at all as a transfer in. Again, like not one that you maybe need to play every single week, just given sort of the strength in depth that you've got there on the bench. So again, really decent. Paqueta is the only one that, in my opinion, is probably the weak spot of your team at the moment, just because of how West Ham are playing. I don't think it's on Paqueta as a player and the quality that he has. It's the system. It's where he's playing every week. There's so much up in the air with him that we just don't know what he should be performing as an FPL asset, because it's different based on whichever position Potter wants to put him in. And then Semenyo, of course, has been so consistent for those first 5 game weeks of the season. Expect that to continue with those good long-term fixtures.
Indeed, and yeah, Mitoma, as Ben sort of alluded to, is on the bench for this week. Obviously, Chelsea away, just trying to avoid the fixture clashes. Basically, it's maybe why I wouldn't start him over the likes of Paqueta. In terms of the Chelsea away, obviously got Tosin starting. Likewise with Richards and Rodon. Obviously, I've got players in the team from those teams as well, or attackers in the team, should I say? So yeah, that's why they are on the bench. In the forward line, then we've got Victor Gyökeres up first. Obviously coming off the blank against City. Slightly disappointed because I thought that City defensively, if they didn't get that early goal, I think it would be in a totally different game, and we'd probably see more chances for Gyökeres. But I think Arteta alluded to it post game that they're not feeding him enough in those kind of games. Saw it at Old Trafford, saw it at Anfield. He's not really getting the chances. When he has had the chances, to be fair to him, he has taken them. So yeah, hopefully we see some more of that. Obviously, the fixture run really sort of swings from game week 7. So even if he blanks against Newcastle away, I'm not too worried about him at the moment. João Pedro's up next. Obviously going against his former club Brighton this week. There's no real other option for Chelsea than to play him at the moment. So, yeah, slight concern about that just because he'll get absolutely worn into the ground, which is not what I expected at the start of this season with the amount of options that they had. But due to the injuries, it's going to be an interesting one, but he'll be a fine play this week. I don't think he was included in the squad for the EFL Cup, so a full week's rest is very, very much sort of welcome for João Pedro. Obviously, just coming back from that long South America travel as well on international duty. And then Erling Haaland, obviously, he's the last transfer in this week. Sort of kicking myself that I took him out. But I'll always attack the fixtures when it comes to the captaincy, and that's what I've done so far this season. And to be fair, it has paid off in terms of the returns, because I've had captaincy returns in every single week. It's just not been necessarily the most optimal ones when Erling Haaland's back in braces and goals every single week. So yeah, he comes in as the third and final free transfer. It will leave me with no free transfers left and a little bit in the bank. I think about $1 million in the bank, because obviously I'm taking out Gakpo for Njai. So yeah, what's the thoughts on the front line, Ben?
Yeah, fairly solid front line. Of course, it's pretty obvious to bring in Erling Haaland this week, and I think that's definitely a transfer worth doing. João Pedro, I'll be honest, I'm less worried about that being run into ground. Chelsea have so many players that if for some of the sort of lower end Champions League games, he might get rotated. Yeah, I mean, there's every chance he could get benched in the Premier League, but I think there's more chance of him coming off on 60 than there is him coming on at 60. So I'm not as concerned as you. And Gyökeres will be a good option going forwards. I've said that before, and I do believe that he will be a really decent option for FPL managers, dependent on squad structure, of course, whether you sort of are able to put that investment into the front three. Okay, so moving on into my team, and we're on the back of like a really small green arrow to 3.8 million in the world. So it's not been the best start, but it certainly hasn't been the worst start in the world. And I'm, fairly content. I'm not happy with the start to the season, but I don't think it's the worst, start in the world to have had. To start off in goal, we've got Robert Sanchez, and for me, I'm slightly concerned about his performances and whether there's potential of him being dropped. Maresca hinted that Sanchez wouldn't play every single week before game week 5. I don't think he's helped his case by getting a red card, and thankfully I benched him for Dubravka last week, so I did get away with that, and it was pretty much, Dubravka's 4 point felt like a 6 or 8 pointer there, especially with the -3 on the bench. In the defence, it's really interesting. I've still got that double up of Spurs defence, which has been, pretty decent to start this season. And with the favourable fixture against Wolves at home, I think this puts me at, a bit of an outlier compared to those wildcarding and those who have wildcarded early. I don't think many would have gone for 2 Spurs defenders, maybe not even 1 Spurs defender in some cases. So the fixture against Wolves is a really nice one that hopefully Spurs can keep that clean sheet there. And the chance of a clean sheet is fairly high too. Murillo is in there as well. Hopeful that he's going to be back this game week after missing out in game week 5. I do think he's going to be back, and was fairly confident that he was going to be back. So we'll just wait and see on that. Sunderland at home is a really good fixture, although we haven't seen too much sort of DEFCON from Murillo so far this season, which has been a little bit surprising. But in any case, we've seen a lot more possession from Nottingham Forest assets. So maybe sort of not as surprising as first anticipated. Josh, that's the defence. What's your first thoughts?
Yeah, obviously the fixtures themselves are really good in the actual defence. Wolves at home is a fine fixture at the moment, with how poor they're playing going forwards. Obviously they did score against Leeds at the weekend, but outside of that they didn't really create too much. So yeah, happy enough to start both of those this week, and obviously the attacking threat has been there from Spurs defenders from set pieces as well, which is something of note, with the likes of Van der Ven and obviously Romero as well, and Porro, when obviously Simmons isn't on the pitch, he's on some set pieces as well. So yeah, it's a nice double up there, and like you say, very differential for this week. Murillo, I think, will be back. I think Ange said, well, I'm taking it, sort of paraphrasing a bit, but basically he was close for the Burnley game. They decided not to risk him. They won't risk him in the Cup, or in the Europa League, should I say, and then he'll be available for the weekend. So yeah, positive news from Murillo owners. It's a definite start, and then it's probably a look to sell after that. The fixtures do get a little bit more tougher for Forest, and obviously DEFCON wise, performance wise, we haven't really seen too much from that Nottingham Forest defence so far.
Okay, so moving on into midfield, and you can start to see some changes compared to last week. As things stand, I haven't made the transfers just like Josh, but as you can see, this is how we line up. We do have 4 free transfers. At this point, I'm planning on making 3 free transfers and rolling 2 over for next week. And I'll get a little bit more into sort of next week's plans after the full team. But for now, Semenyo is in, transferred in for Florian Wirtz. Again, just like Josh, sort of looking at sort of moving away from those Liverpool assets, and looking to put in assets with good fixtures and good form. Semenyo definitely ticks both of those boxes. Bruno Fernandes I've had in for a little while now, and I do think he's been fantastic for me. And again, really happy to keep, just given the flexibility that we have around him, to be able to then move on to Salah if needed, and be able to sort of have a way to get him back in. Bukayo Saka is in as it stands for Mohamed Salah, and I do think, given Madueke's injury news, Saka's appeal and minutes potential does go up. I think he'll probably get 60 minutes this week, and gradually his minutes will increase week by week. Newcastle away isn't the most ideal entry point, but I feel like in this sort of situation, I can take that risk. Just given sort of the rest of the team, looks fairly solid for this week. So I'd be happy to just take that risk, bring him in this week. If he gets a return, fantastic. A bit like Josh with Gyökeres. If he doesn't, I'm not going to be too worried. I'm more concerned really about the minutes there. Tajani Reinders in there as well has been really good, and I'm really hot on him as, you know, one of the best value assets in the game at the moment. And then Morgan Rogers is probably the weak spot in the midfield, just like Josh and Paqueta. Given the free transfers that I'm looking to make, it was either Wirtz or Rogers that go out. I've just kept Rogers in there, likely to have him for a couple more game weeks whilst the fixture run is still good for Aston Villa, and see if they can turn that around. Josh, what's the thoughts on the midfield and those first two transfers?
Yeah, I think overall it's a solid midfield. Villa, it's a sticky one. Like, I don't see them turning it around right now. Just that they're not playing to the level that we expect them. Emery's also hinted at that as well in these pressers, that it's just not the same as last season. I did think that Jadon Sancho did play quite well when he came on at the weekend, though, so a slight benefit there. I am surprised not to see the likes of Elliott and Sancho start games, because they have needed help in the attacking areas. Equally defensively, they've been very poor as well. I think they're 19th for expected goals conceded, so it's not been great so far this season for them. Hopefully, it can obviously uptick with Fulham at home. It's not the easiest game, but then I think they have. It might be Burnley after that, I think it is. So yeah, a decent run like you allude to. I think Saka's an interesting one. Obviously, the price at the moment is great. You're sort of hopping in on him before the masses do. I definitely get why you'd pick him. I'd just be very concerned about the minutes just because of how injury prone he's been. This is his second injury already this season. He had injuries last season as well. So yeah, you know what you're getting yourself in for there in terms of him at the moment, but very low owned, very nice price point at the moment as well. So can see the appeal going into that nice run from next week for Arsenal. And then yeah, Semenyo was spoken about a lot this week on YouTube. He's been fantastic, and you know there's a reason why he's 50% owned at the minute. He's just such a good asset. And yeah, one if you haven't got already, you definitely need to be getting in your teams.
Okay, so moving on into the strike force, and of course, João Pedro still in there, been fantastic for me since game week one. And like I said, really happy to keep him for the foreseeable future. The third free transfer that I made is, or looking to make, sorry, is Wally Watkins. Ollie Watkins out. He has been a Wally this season with his finishing. And Erling Haaland in and on the captaincy, and very much in a position where I'm looking to use the triple captain at this game week, which is fairly exciting. Of course, we'll wait and see what happens in those press conference with Guardiola and a little bit of an update on Haaland from the back of that. And then yeah, that leaves me with one free transfer to roll over into next week. So next week I can look at making up to 2 free transfers, and with that I'd have about 1 million in the bank with these transfers. I'd be looking to move Murillo onto Gabriel and then Sanchez onto Raya. It's quite tight at the moment in terms of budget, so I'm well aware that I might have to go for potentially a Timber or an alternative option in that Arsenal defence instead of Gabriel. But that is sort of the rough plan as it stands with the triple captaincy chip, and then loading up on potentially a double Arsenal, double Spurs defence, which could be really interesting. So, Josh, what's the thoughts on the strike force, the chips, and then the potential transfer plans from Game Week 7 onwards?
Yeah, I think it's right. We spoke about it in the game week guide video. You know, you're not going to talk anyone out of triple captain in Haaland this week. It's a form meets fixture sort of scenario, which both are ticks in the box sort of thing. So yeah, really nice option this week. Obviously, I could play it myself. I think I am going to hold off. I might get the urge towards the back end of the week. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think it's obviously a fantastic option. And like we alluded to in that video, for Erling Haaland to get a week's rest before a fixture like this is very rare. So strike while the iron's hot and all that. So I think that's a fine move. The defensive ones for the future weeks make sense. Obviously, Arsenal defence is going to be, well, it already is very good. So having it for a nice fixture run as well is going to be nice. It'd be interesting to see how they do against West Ham, because West Ham, I think, have won at the Emirates the last 2 or 3 seasons. So we'll have to see if they sort of keep up that mantra. But overall, team looks great, and the transfers should set you up well for the upcoming weeks. Okay, then, so that wraps up our Game Week 6 team reveals. It's a hectic FPL week. So many chips being played, loads of transfers being made. Let us know what you're doing in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. So much going on. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben,
I've been Josh.
and we'll see you guys.
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.